Hello, and welcome to today's webinar, 4 Proven Strategies to Catapult Your Fleet Safety Program to Another Level. I'm Jim Luff, Fleet Editorial Contributor, and I'll be your moderator for today's event. I encourage you to ask questions during the webinar at any point, and we will try to address them all before the webinar ends. But if we don't get to yours, don't worry, we will answer your question by email after the event is concluded. I've got 5 industry experts with me today to share practical advice and real-life experiences for safety program success. So let's meet our experts. First up, we have Jeff Martin. He's the Vice President of Global Sales Strategy for Lytx. We also have Ryan Brandos, a Senior Key Executive with Lytx, and also Jeff McKinney, who is Vice President of Safety at Jetco Delivery. And Susan Hipp is joining us. She's the Executive Director of the Network of Employers for Traffic Safety, more commonly known as NETS, and Kevin Kilner, Chief Safety Officer for Beacon. Welcome to the webinar, you guys.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
So let's get into what we're going to cover today. Safety, it isn't just a priority, it is the key to success. And we're going to talk about understanding and identifying potential fleet risks. We'll talk about the best practices for safety programs and real-life examples of successful risk prevention. Then we'll have 4 proven strategies for taking your fleet safety program to the next level. So let's dive right in. Now, I mentioned that safety isn't just a priority, it's the key to fleet success. And you might be wondering, where to start? It begins with developing a comprehensive fleet safety program that's centered around your greatest asset, and that is your people. People are the heart of every business, and people are what makes your business great, or they can doom your business with a lack of training or standard operating procedures. Can you elaborate on that, Jeff McKinney?
Yeah. People, like you said, it's the number one, and safety is our number one. It's a non-negotiable value. Priorities change, and they always do. And you can't do that with safety. But the people, the best way to start this culture is communication. We're all human, and we need to communicate with each other. So the biggest thing right now is communicate your policies, procedures, and continued education. So if you communicate with your drivers and your team, and you talk to them rather than at them, and you listen, the culture is going to start right there, and you'll work it from there with your continued education.
I think that's a great point. Communications and ongoing training. Did somebody else have a comment?
That's a great point Jeff brings up with the continuing education, because that development factor is so essential in today, because much like professional athletes, whether a CDL driver or not, continuous improvement is really required today, with the highways being more dangerous than ever before.
I agree. And I think that, so many times we might do an initial training of a new employee or a new driver and say, well, we've trained him on our procedures and policies, and do the best you can with the tools you have. And that ongoing training and the communication about things that change within the company can do so much to help promote a culture of safety. So our goal here today is to help you take your fleet safety program to the next level. And we're going to do a little networking. We'll have an open conversation to discuss challenges, opportunities, and real-life examples of successes and the lessons that are learned. We'll go over best practices, and we'll cover best practices for understanding and identifying potential risks. We'll talk about those standard operating procedures that serve as a guide to empower you to build your own safety program. And along the way, we'll share 4 proven strategies for taking your fleet safety program to the next level, including leveraging tools and technology, developing a coaching plan, and creating a positive recognition program, thereby establishing key performance indicators. Let's move on to our next slide here. Identifying and addressing risks in your fleet. Let's talk about exploring the crucial tactics of putting together a safety program. A critical component is to identify and address some of the fleet risks. Unsafe conditions and situations can pop up anywhere at any time. They can be caused by mechanical issues. They can be caused by weather issues, road construction, unsafe condition and situations that our drivers are going to face every day. So let's have our expert panel discuss a few of the different buckets relative to fleet risk. Let's talk about, we talked about retention is a very important part of creating the safety culture, keeping the same people and having them foster that culture. Where does, talk about retention, Susan, and where this fits in?
Sure. And I think Jeff McKinney had just touched on that a little bit already in terms of communication. It's really important to communicate with your drivers, with your employees, and listen to them and hear them, because that makes them feel respected. And if they're not respected, they're not valued, they don't want to stay there. So you need to have an organization that really has that strong safety culture, again, that Jeff mentioned. But that safety culture, it starts at the top, right? You need to have management and leadership on board and really communicating that message that it's important. And really share with employees that you are listening and that they're heard and that you make changes based on that and have those strong policies in place. A lot of it starts with, having those policies to show what's expected of them. And we're going to touch on it later here too, I think, but the recognition, showing when they're doing good things, positive reinforcement and recognition. Well, I think we'll expand on that a little bit more, but things like that are really important to employees. And I think Jeff and Kevin can probably chime in a little bit too in terms of the retention. We do an annual benchmark report, and on our report, we ask the companies that are participating what their turnover rate is. And we're seeing anywhere from 3 to 40% turnover rate. And,
Wow.
Why is that? 40% is really high. So why is that? Why are employees leaving? And that's something you kind of need to delve in to figure out, are you sending the right message? Are you listening to the employees? Are you really valuing them? So I think that's where you start.
I think that's a great comment, and I've actually come across fleet managers in my 31 years of experience in fleet management who have actually told drivers who complained about we call them dummy lights or idiot lights that come on, but there's a light that comes on that tells you something's wrong. And I've seen fleet managers that have actually said, take some black electrical tape it over the top of it. Don't worry about it. We know about it. It's fine. I think that kind of fosters what you're talking about, Susan. I'm not being heard. I'm going to go find someplace that cares a little bit more about their vehicles, their maintenance, their safety, and more importantly, me as the operator of that vehicle. That's just something that should never happen. Let's talk about lytics for a minute, because I'm making the assumption that you're here today, you're watching the webinar, you know what lytics is, but just to make sure, lytics is a technology company that designs, manufactures, and sells video telematics products to commercial and public sector fleets. And this technology really became something that fleet managers started implementing in the mid 90s and has grown exponentially since then, and can be a real key technology tool. Ryan, can you speak to that and the benefits of lytics as a company?
Sure. Yeah. So, the number one overarching goal of lytics is to have no commercial driver be at fault for a collision, right? That is our goal. And we achieve that goal through behavior change. And we don't know what behaviors to change if you can't identify them. So one of the biggest things that we help fleets understand is what is driving the risky or poor behaviors or bad habitual behaviors in your fleet. Is it following distance? Are we, tailgating? Are we not keeping 4 seconds? Is it distractions, whether that be their cell phone or paper route sheets or fiddling around in their lunchbox? We're trying to figure out your patterns, your fleet's unique profile to help you then understand how to change that behavior to improve your overall fleet safety and reduce the claim frequency and the severity of any claims that you do have. That's the cornerstone of the lytics products, and the lytics mission is to change driver behavior for the positive and for the better.
On that note, how do you deal with drivers who feel that a camera in the vehicle might be an invasion of their privacy?
Yeah, so that's a common question, and I've done probably hundreds of driver meetings with various industries in my experience with lytics, and more often than not, the overarching complaint that, if we could generalize it all, as one major complaint, is they feel like it's surveillance. You don't trust me. You're watching me all the time. And that's just not how our technology works, and not how many of our competitors' technology works. There are exception-based recording tools that basically only record when certain actions are taken. We have machine vision, artificial intelligence that can pick up when they use their cell phone. The only time we record is if you pick up your cell phone. If you never pick up your cell phone, we're not going to record you. If you drive the truck smoothly, you don't slam on your brakes, we're not going to record you. All of those types of things help drivers understand that this is not a tool meant to surveil you, meant to take a look or listen to your private conversations or your thoughts or watch you singing to Taylor Swift if that's your game. We don't care about any of that. All we care about is that you're doing the operation of the vehicle in a way that is the safest for not only yourself and your fellow folks out there on the road, the driving public. So that's generally, we say that's a global stat, that if a driver on average in a commercial fleet is only on camera for 2 minutes a month, that's it. And so, wow, as a grand scheme of things, you're really not on camera that much. And if you drive the truck smoothly and safely, we've got plenty of examples of drivers that have gone years without recording a single event.
Ryan, if I could ask, just jump in there for a second. I was curious, do you have generally do you have a kind of a pilot period where employees get to see how it works before you actually start, keeping all of that? So it maybe like gets them more comfortable with it, I guess is where I'm going.
Yeah, absolutely. And so most of our clients that decide to take a look at lytics and roll this out, generally speaking, we recommend a couple of things. One, that you pilot it, you trial it, you get driver feedback, right? You put this in front of the drivers. And for me personally, I like to get in front of the drivers myself. The drivers, I really appreciate that communication that you were talking about earlier, Susan, when it comes directly from us. And I'm in the line of fire. It's not just, we're doing this. I'll put myself in that position to take their questions directly and make them understand, where we're coming from. And it's not a place of stick. We're coming from a place of carrot, in the sense that we're trying to ensure that they get home safely, and we want to reward them for good driving. And some of those same practices that we're talking about also lead back to the retention. When we have a technology like a lytics or one of our competitors, and they're used in a positive way, that can also help with retention, because then drivers are rewarded for their good driving activities. They never had visibility to that before, but now with a tool like lytics, they do have that visibility, and safety bonuses and awards points and things of that nature can become part of that conversation and help you retain employees.
Can I add on to that?
Sure.
With a fleet, we did the pilot program. You give it to 2 or 3 drivers, and I don't mean to say anything bad about our drivers. We got great drivers, but we had A drivers and we had B drivers. And we put it in there and trialed it with those 6 or 7, 10 drivers, let them say the same thing. We came up, and then the word of mouth spread, and that helps bring in the power of these event recorders. But for the retention, here's part of the communication. Way back when I drove, it was a he said, she said. And you're out there with the officer, you're trying to tell the officer, this is what I did. And now we have video from lytics, whoever else it is. Now you have, here's that communication saying, look, you said that you did this, and the video shows you did this. So here's your retention tool, here's your communication, here's your buy-in. Just one more thing, my drivers, when they say they go home into their cars, they feel naked without the camera. So that tells you a lot of how much the culture of the cameras have changed things in their behaviors. And a lot of them have bought cameras, whatever it's the Garmin or whatever, and put it in their personal vehicles because they feel naked without it. And yes, it has changed and turned the preventive accidents into, sorry, I didn't mean to say accidents, crashes, to non-preventable. So it has changed a lot in the industry.
Great information there. Moving along, I'm going to throw this out to Kevin. Let's talk about the big three safety issues. First of all, what are they, Kevin?
Yeah, typically in my conversations with people when we're talking around big three, it goes to some type of titling of these things. It's distracted driving or impaired driving or those aggressive motorists that are out there. And of course, none of them are ever us, are they? We're never the aggressive artist or motorist, for sure. And when we bring all of this stuff, everybody's been speaking right in the right lanes so far today. And when we leverage everything that has been discussed so far, and we bring DriveCam to a new group of drivers or a new community, the message we bring is the human condition is real. And nobody is perfect. Now, of course, our drivers would never do anything wrong, would you? And they all say, no, of course not. But we all have those moments of imperfection. And while those other drivers that are distracted, impaired, or aggressive, we need to leave plenty of room for them, right? We can't control what they do, but we can absolutely make sure we allow enough room for us to respond appropriately in the moment. So what we really push as a message to address other people's aggressive behavior is let's take an inventory of ourselves, see where we are, and what are we doing to leave plenty of room and time to adjust. And I'll tell you, when you get a group of drivers together that will all accept that the human condition is real and understand that this tool exonerates them, boy, the bringing this initiative forward through your organization becomes simplified exponentially. And if I may, I'll share one hypothetical story. I've been told I can share a story, and I've been informed. Sure. My attorneys love me and say, just tell them it's hypothetical. Got it. So hypothetically, there could have been a vehicle that crossed over a center lane median and ended up in the living room of a home. In this hypothetical story, very fortunate in terms of nobody was injured, but very unfortunate, as you could assume, from a damage perspective, potential for injury, any kind of litigation or lawsuit, unless, of course, you have that camera that you can look at and the video that you can look at and realize the driver did everything they possibly could have been reasonably expected to do, but another driver made contact with them from the side and pushed that vehicle into an out of control motion that came to a rest without hitting anything. So even in the worst of worst, this exoneration ability to affirm for a driver that's been through something that you did everything that was reasonable and good, and to try to rehab that driver back in the service from that perspective alone is valuable. But then to take it to the perspective of making sure that driver doesn't end up in the middle of any litigation as well as your company, boy, that's a whole nother story to it.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that real life scenario. Oh, I'm sorry, hypothetical situation.
Right?
And hypothetical lawsuits. They don't actually. Right. Anyway, let me throw something to Jeff Martin here. Why is it so important to identify risks?
Well, I think it's pretty simple. I think for the most part, the majority, if not every person on today's call, including our guests, we all share an awesome responsibility. And that responsibility is that we help save lives. We help save dreams, preserve families. It's an awesome responsibility. Those of us who have led safety teams, led organizations directly and indirectly, as I do now, it's an awesome responsibility when you think about the impacts that we can have on lives. Each and every one of us, whether we like it or not. And some people don't like it. This isn't an easy game, so to speak. It's real life issues and challenges. everybody knows about fatality metrics. We're all reading about them. The continuous rise in fatalities over the last 3 years. We don't have a metric that says lives saved, but I think one of the things is that with this team on this call, and certainly our audience, our guests joining us today, as long as we're doing these right things we're talking about today and more, taking advantage of technology, taking advantage of our skill and will of our people, empowering them, we can absolutely save lives and save dreams. And that metric, we can know in our heart that we absolutely are doing that, because it's getting serious. We've all heard about the nuclear verdicts, certainly the settlements, painful. It doesn't matter who you are when you read about it. There's an aggravating circumstance typically behind it. Person was on the phone. DVIRs weren't being done. There's something that usually aggravates that significant verdict, especially if it involves a pedestrian or bicyclist. But I think the one thing that everybody on this call should remember, about 8 months ago in Florida, in a conservative county, a professional CDL driver was sentenced to 28 years in prison for manslaughter. Where sadly he rear-ended a car while being distracted with his communication device and killed a 9-year-old boy and seriously injured his parents. That was significant. That was a conservative venue where someone got it really handed to them. So many families, as we all know, forever impacted, sadly. But I think we're going to start to see where there are criminal prosecutions. And so it's important that we have the right policies in place. We have the right practices of coaching effectively. And we have those, not only the training and development, as Jeff and Kevin mentioned, but you have the awareness campaigns to drive the importance of why distractions are so important, because you also have to make sure that you're also protecting your not only your team, certainly, but your communities, but also your shareholders, whether private equity or not. Brand and reputation is really coming into play today with embarrassment, and that's something that organizations are taking seriously.
Well, I think that through the evolution of technology, we know so much more now about our drivers when they're out in the field, including the direction they're traveling, the speed they're traveling at. We're able to look at the view that they're seeing. It's a lot of data that provides a lot of opportunity for analytics to go in and evaluate different areas. Looking at the slide on the screen right now and the third bullet point, utilizing data analytics tools and technology, we have, this data can be used for coaching safe driving behavior, daily vehicle inspections. Anybody want to talk more about how the technology and analytics can be used in these areas displayed on the screen?
Sure, I'll jump in. Fleet tracking, I think, is one that's really gaining in traction and attention from companies because of its inherent value to various departments within an organization. So with fleet tracking, obviously managers can manage where fleet is and where they've been, or the cookie crumb trail. But you can also lend that same opportunity for your dispatch, certainly. So they have that information, certainly your logistics for the breadcrumb routing to make sure that routes and or trips were in fact followed efficiently. Then you also, for those organizations that have call centers, those reps' ability to do a one-and-done phone call with a customer, whether it's an ETA or a whatever it is, a special request, they have that opportunity to see where that driver is at and or where they're progressing towards and with an ETA. So there's many different possibilities beyond just safety, where efficiency and cost savings can absolutely be realized through the power of fleet tracking.
And they're also interconnected. We've seen this over the last 10 years of examining drivers' behaviors, not only on the road from a drive cam analytics perspective, but how does that tie into their job performance overall? The people who are, we found a strong correlation between the people who have some customer service complaints or were rough with their deliveries, who are also the same people who are rough with their trucks and drive the most aggressively. there's strong evidence across every sector of the commercial and fleets, whether it's utility companies to waste companies to local delivery to over-the-road trucking. Drivers who tend to cut corners in one aspect of their job, whether that's a DVIR process or that's a customer service or that's delivery, they tend to cut those same corners when we're talking about driving and driving best practices and keeping Smith system keys and all that kind of stuff. So from a metricing standpoint, it does also make our job a bit easier, because if we're tracking multiple different ways, if we're starting to see someone show up in those metrics that we want to have a conversation with, by and large, the correlation exists that if they're struggling in one area, they may be struggling in multiple. And that is also another indicator where, if you are talking about, driving safety, that could lead to, hey, let's also talk about, your on-site performance as well, et cetera, and so forth. So all of these metrics tend to have a strong correlation with each other and highlight where that 80-20 rule, right? 80% of your folks are going to be great. 20% of them need a little bit of help. And there's multiple ways to identify that 20%.
And speaking of that, Ryan, if you can continue, there are 4 phases of risk identification. Can you speak to those, Ryan?
Yeah. So, Jeff kind of touched on the big one, right? The saving lives and saving dreams, right? That's the overall arching goal. And then the biggest thing with fleets, whenever we come in with a new account, or even when we start to launch some of our newer risk identification technologies at Lytx, it's always that concept of you don't know what you don't know, right? If you don't have visibility into your fleet, into your driver's activities, if you don't know that it exists, how can you help correct it, or how can you mitigate the risk that creates? So being able to use multiple tools, and it's not all of it is going to be solved with video. Some of it is with truck data, ECM. You're right. We can see the throttle. We can see the braking percentage. We know exactly when they touched the brake, when they didn't. Some of that is, going to be telematics, like Jeff mentioned, with fleet tracking and being able to identify where they went, how fast they were going, the route they took. Why did you go through that intersection when we know that that's a really bad one? There's multiple ways to identify that risk with multiple different tools. And it is somewhat of a big, kind of on its face, a big burden to try to take all of those in simultaneously. But as you develop your safety programs and as your safety culture, the spirit of continuous improvement is you keep adding these layers on as you go and stacking them one on top of the other. You got to start somewhere, but then you build up to being able to look at all of these things holistically to help improve your fleet safety and identify those risks. And then on top of all that, you add the more technologies as they exist and as they get developed to identify even more and more risk. The great example is we used to be accelerometer based, where only physical forces exerted on the truck triggered our device. Now, with the advent of AI and artificial intelligence and machine vision, we can actually detect objects in real time. So if a cell phone is picked up, if a seatbelt is not on, if the driver is following too close to the vehicle in front, we can pick these things up regardless if the truck is driving smoothly or not. And that opened a lot more eyes and picked up even more risk and more identification to help mitigate those risks going forward.
Yeah, those are fabulous tools. We're starting to get quite a few questions. So in the interest of time, Jeff Martin, can you briefly describe how can fleet managers harness safety?
Well, first of all, it's an affair of the heart, and it starts with the leadership. When the senior leadership commits to a safety program and the technologies required, whether it be behavior-based video safety or telematics, those tools and technologies are there for the managers to use, so they're having the right conversation with the right people at the right time for the right reason. And they're doing it with empathy, they're doing it with appreciation, but they're also doing it with a spirit of a coach and a servant type of approach. That is really one of the best ways to harness safety, because when you start to win hearts of the employees, those frontline industrial athletes, drivers, you start to win minds. And when you have that shift Ryan talked about, where you've got about 80% of your folks that are doing it and they want to do it right, you got that other. That's the group that really is the bedrock for your next level culture. So taking advantage of the technologies, but absolutely has to be a part of managers, and they have to take it as such.
Thank you for that. let's talk about crafting a winning coaching strategy. So the second must-have strategy to incorporate in your safety program is coaching. Having a plan in place to help drivers stay with your company, that longevity, maintain their expertise, improve their expertise in a safe environment is critical. Let's talk about using a successful coaching program. Kevin, can you take us through the areas that can be improved through coaching?
Yeah, for sure. First of all, we'll start by defining what coaching is. Coaching is not retraining. Coaching is not dictating. Coaching is not disciplining. Those are very important functions in other parts of our business. But the coaching moment is about creating the aha moment for that driver, helping that driver see what we see and realize that this thing, this behavior, this thought is not a level of risk that they will accept. And that's what changes the way that they think, which then will change the way they behave. When we do that, when we define coaching in that way and we invest that deeply with our employees, the benefits you're going to get are going to be outside of just safety performance. Your employee retention will be improved just by the drivers knowing that you actually care about them. Your safety expertise, of course, your productivity improvements will come. People that enjoy what they're doing and who they do it for and know that they're cared about. There are scientific studies that go all the way back to the 1930s that show productivity improves just by employees knowing that they're cared for and that there's recognition. Job satisfaction comes with it. Your communication, just by having a coaching culture, your communication improves. And all of that, everybody on the call can realize all of that translates into whatever your bottom line metrics are, whether they be financial or other.
Wow, this is all great stuff. I think it's important to acknowledge that a great safety program must start with a commitment from leadership, as you mentioned, to ensure continuous improvement through coaching. And managers themselves need to undergo training to learn the best practices for effective coaching to really achieve what you just described. Not everybody's a born coach, and sometimes the coach needs coaching.
Yes.
Let me throw this to Susan. Can you speak to the benefits of a successful coaching program?
We've touched on a lot of this in terms of retention and just, a better attitude from the drivers and employees and really respecting them and valuing them. So I think we've really hit on that a lot because that's just going to make them want to perform for you. That's going to make them want to stay there and work for you. One of the things we haven't really talked about, though, is immediate feedback. When you're seeing issues with your drivers, when you're seeing things happening, if you wait, a couple weeks, a month later, is it going to have the same impact? No, you need to have that immediate coaching, that immediate feedback right there so that they can learn from you. And so, by doing that, again, it's as Jeff was talking about earlier, opening those lines of communication and just making sure you're always touching base and hearing your drivers and listening to them and sharing that. And that's just going to give you, better feedback and just more respect from those drivers. And so I think that coaching is really important and it's essential as part of that culture.
And 20 years of lytics data backs you up on that. The faster you coach those drivers, the more effective that coaching is. People who wait, 4 to 7 days as opposed to just 2, it makes a difference. Every day matters, and having that immediate feedback is backed up by tons and tons of data.
Jeff Martin, I'm sorry.
No, I was just saying that we do this daily. I look at videos every morning and I send out a list to all of our coaches, to our team. And you can't wait. Susan's right. You cannot wait. You must coach there and then, not 4 days later, not a day later. That day, get with that professional and talk to that person and wrap it up. Start off with something positive. Let them see it, let them see it, let them say it, and then tell them do it. As the 3 ways that I train to see it, say it, do it. and you're going to get more of a positive return because we do things, we're human, we do things that we don't realize we're doing until you see it, and you can't learn if you can't see it.
Let's talk, Jeff Martin. I want to ask you, what is the effect of a safety program on operating costs?
Well, I tell you what, it's one of the most exciting things, because when you crack the nut, if you will, of the safety culture, and you start to see those great improvements, and people start winning hearts to win minds, and you've got a different mindset of not only the frontline employees, but the supervisors and managers as well. It opens up many, many opportunities, as Kevin and Ryan mentioned earlier. And I refer to it as a total value realization. When you have trusting employees who are working cohesively in their two-way feedback, those frontline employees have some of the best ideas if we as leaders just take a moment to listen to them and appreciate them. They'll have the solutions, no doubt about it. But really opens up doors for that coaching to go from safety, for safer behaviors, and certainly appreciation, recognition when those safe behaviors are being demonstrated. But also, you start to have better conversations about taking care of the fleet. So you're from quality DVIRs, pre and post trips. That starts to obviously have a huge impact, certainly for the fleet team, but also the reduced wear and tear on brakes, tires, and certainly fuel. That has a big opportunity. But then you start working with the logistics team, with dispatch, and looking at trip efficiencies, looking at wasteful steps during the course of the day, whether it be a route or a trip, where their ideas are, how they can be more efficient and certainly make themselves most efficient. But then it also opens up doors, as mentioned earlier, for better customer service. What are the ideas how we can do our service and satisfy our customers even better? Those frontline employees have the answers. They absolutely do. And the good news is there's a lot of companies today that are doing it well. They're doing the safety, they're doing the service, and they're hitting their efficiencies mark, and they're driving costs, and a very successful company. So it's an exciting time when you can do that within your organization. There's no doubt.
Well, let me summarize that. I heard that in a bubble as you can save a lot of money. I mean, you touched on so many different areas of savings there in that reply that I can see how adding this type of technology and coaching combined can really save a company money. And that's, probably an unintended side benefit of invoking this kind of thing program. Ryan, anything you'd like to add?
So as I mentioned kind of before, the biggest thing that we've kind of noticed over the years of doing this from a data perspective is, as you improve the safety aspects, and Jeff mentioned it as well, the other parts of things start to improve. We work with our customers on their return on investments. What we've learned over the years is that, the fleet cost per vehicle per year is a great metric to start out with. But then as we've grown over time in partnership with our customers, is that ROI starts to expand rapidly. In years 2, 3, 4, 5, they start to see things on the fleet maintenance side. They start to see things on the operations side. That ROI just continues to expand and balloon as more and more of their functions of their business start to align in that same concept of, it starts with that safety culture. It starts with that, want and will to do things the right way. And then that just propagates and becomes a foundational piece of the whole organization, regardless of function. And so that is where, from a leadership buy-in standpoint, that I think is the most critical piece for making, that commitment is, hey, we need to start somewhere to get to that level. Safety is the best place to start, because then it just begins a chain reaction that will cascade throughout the organization once that's successfully implemented. So I would say that, that holds true. The data backs it up, and it cannot be stressed enough that, improvements in our fleet safety will translate without a doubt to other aspects of your organization.
I love it. All right. We talked a little bit about recognition programs, and I'd like to come back to that because I think that, sometimes companies implement driver recognition programs because it seems really cool to award the driver of the year. But recognition programs are really intended to do so much more. And Kevin, can you elaborate on what a recognition program should really accomplish?
Yeah. So first of all, a recognition program should be very well thought out and intentional, and from the leadership all the way through the org. How are you going to sustain this thing going forward, and making sure that we have leader buy-in on it, and making sure we've accounted for all the things that we want to do. At the end of the day, the results of a great recognition program are going to drive your driver's desire to continue to get better, to continue to improve, to continue to serve your mission and your vision of the company. But one of the things I would say you've got to critically think through how do I make this duplicatable, or how do I make sure I do this year over year and keep it meaningful? If you come out your first year with some kind of big award, but you're not willing to do it year over year, well, then a year from now, everybody's going to say, what happened to the award, right? So we want to make sure that it's something that's sustainable. We also want to make sure it's something that our driver population cares about, something that's important to them, and meaningful for sure. And the finding the ROI in a recognition program is really, really simple. The hard part is really giving it thought, knowing that you can build momentum around your employee and your workforce, and leveraging your culture to really drive that state of continual improvements. And then it ties right in with their day-to-day decisions. That just reminds them that the more I listen to the feedback, the more I adjust to the feedback, the better chance I have to gain this level of recognition.
So what I'm hearing is that a successful recognition program really requires leadership buy-in as well, and that
Absolutely.
Leaders have to play a key role in championing safety initiatives and are essential to setting the tone of the organization's commitment to promoting and recognizing safe driving behavior. What are some of the incentives or rewards that you've seen used in recognizing great drivers? And I'll just throw that out to anybody that wants to answer that.
Yeah, and I'll just kind of close up. The one thing that we've been using that has been highly effective is the recognition that our drivers would love to take a vacation, but maybe don't have the affordability for that. So to an organization in our industry and our size, giving our drivers a paid week vacation for two in the U.S. or whatever confines you want to set to it to control the cost is fine. But man, that's a game changer to many of them. Like that, it makes such a huge difference, or to take their family. So that's one thing we've done, to have kind of one big thing instead of a bunch of little things. And it really seems to have gotten the greatest amount of horsepower in terms of the whole organization getting behind it.
Yeah, I'd certainly be incentivized by a week off with pay.
Yeah, I was going to say the two things that are key in my experience working with customers to having a partnership with a positive recognition program are two. Kevin kind of touched on it, but the leadership buy-in, but also the leadership's public buy-in, as in right in front of the drivers. They're the ones giving out the awards. They're the ones sending out the emails, making it so that when the people receive that recognition, they receive it in front of their peers. It's not just hey, congratulations, you qualified for your safety bonus. Here's a private email with your gift certificate to Applebee's. That doesn't do anything for you. But when it's a team huddle before you launch in the morning and you go out there and say, we'd like to congratulate Jeff Martin on his fantastic, quarter, and he had no accidents or no collisions or no, customer service complaints, whatever that recognition is, doing that publicly in front of their peers has been a key to making sure that driver's buy-in is, it supercharges the whole positive recognition piece. And then the second thing is that as Kevin mentioned, that there's something of value to be had with it, right? Something the drivers want. Paid vacation is a great example. Some people use straight cash. I have a client who's got a less than 5% turnover rate because they give out $500 a month if you qualify for the safety bonus. That's an extra $6,000 a year. That's a massive incentive for them. Everybody loves it. They don't have drivers turning over. And there's others that have outsourced it. There's other companies out there that will help partner with you to build points programs that then can be translated to whatever they want. Video game systems, jewelry for the wife, golf bags, whatever the case is. So that something they want and do it publicly. Those are the two keys.
I love it. We're running out of time here. We have a lot of questions to take. So real quick, I'm going to throw this to Susan and Jeff Martin. One can go after the other. We'll start with Susan. We're going to talk about metrics and reporting. I mean, obviously, we're obtaining all this data. We have to use it in some logical way. Susan, let's talk about how we use the metrics and the data that we collect.
Sure. Yeah. So NETS does an annual benchmark report, as I mentioned, where we are collecting metrics from our members, along with a survey questionnaire to find out about their specific fleet safety program. I think the most important point here is to start somewhere. Start tracking something. If you're not doing anything right now, I mean, there are a multitude of things that can bring your program to the next level. You can't necessarily put all of them in place all at once. Just start with something and then build on that. Ryan was talking about that, build up and keep going. And so, you have to look at things, we look at the collision rate, collisions per million miles. You can look at lagging versus leading indicators. Look at how many coaching events you've had. Look at specific IVMS events that were recorded. There's a number of areas you can look at. And our benchmark report from year to year shows the companies that have lower crash rates are consistently doing certain things. And some of those things include, monitoring their in-vehicle monitoring systems and sharing that feedback with everybody, not just with the management and leadership, but sharing it with the drivers, for example. Fatigue programs, putting fatigue programs in place is another one we're seeing is bringing down crash rates. Just, all of those things combined together can really make a big improvement. But again, if you can't do all of them, just start with something.
Sure. Sounds good. Jeff, closing comments.
Yeah, I hit it on the nail on the head. Keeping it simple is obvious. For those organizations that are most successful, it's consistent, whether it's monthly. It's simple in that the KPIs are known from the CEO to the frontline drivers, and most importantly, your policies, processes, SOPs, they support the actionability of what it is you're trying to improve.
Love it. So our key takeaways from this webinar are safety is paramount. People are the priority. Focus on coaching and recognition, and KPIs must be consistent, actionable, and reasonable. I think that we've learned some great information. What a wonderful panel that we put together here. Now let's move on to your questions. And as I mentioned, we do have quite a few. Let's start with, does Lytx offer a live traffic condition such as the Waze app in order to proactive assist drivers to avoid potential incidents? Let's throw that to Ryan.
Sure. We do have a unified map integrated with Google Traffic, and we also have we utilize our camera network to bring back images of the roadways, so we can actually tell you in real time what the conditions are on a particular roadway. If it's covered in snow and hasn't been plowed yet, we can see that. If it's got traffic in various places around the country, we have that integrated in there. We can also show you where each one of your vehicles are. So from a dispatching standpoint, we have all that information readily available directly in our portal. We don't necessarily pump that information to the driver with the exception of weather alerts. So if the National Weather Service puts down a whiteout warning or a winter storm warning, we can actually pump that information directly into the cab as audio feedback for the driver. But we don't have real-time traffic to the driver, but we do have that on the back end for dispatch and management.
All right. This question goes to you as well. Do you guys provide coaching documents to coach our drivers?
Yes, we have tons and tons of collateral that is built around how to coach a coach, how to train a coach to be that everything we want them to be, and have those conversations in a meaningful way. And it not is accusatory or condescending or disciplinarian. We want them to have those conversations in a way that fosters improvement, not necessarily is going to the principal's office. We don't want it to feel like that. Right. Not only do we have documents, but we also have done tons of trainings in person with our managed services. So part of the DriveCam program is you get access to people like me who work with customers every day to help them and consult and train coaches on best practices that we've learned over the years with our customers.
Sounds good. Our next question comes from Cecil Jack. He wants our panel contact information. There you go, Cecil. It's up on the screen for you. And anybody else that wants the contact information, there's also a link in there to the Fleet Safety Operational Excellence Playbook. I highly suggest that you obtain this document, download it. It'll be worthwhile. Next question, does Lytx have any partner who can help with the recognition aspect to award drivers for positive performance?
We have worked with a few in the past. All-Star Incentive is one that I've been working with personally. They have done a program for a couple of my clients now, where they've set up a points award system that we feed Lytx data and other operational data into them. They put together a set of gatekeeping conditions for when to award points. Those points then redeemable for anything the driver wants. It's one way to keep that offer varied for your positive recognition program, so that each driver has individual tastes and wants and needs. The vacation idea from Kevin is fantastic. That's almost universal. But if you want to go on a different route, there is definitely partners that we've worked with in the past where we can feed our data to them and help them, and they will help you build your positive recognition program.
All right, this next one is a tough one. How do you implement recognition programs from companies with strict union rules where monetary compensation isn't allowed? Who wants to take this?
Well, I'll take it. There's many different forms of recognition that can be done. You got everything from challenge coins to certificates to many different ways you can skin that cat and working. Business agents, they want what's best for the locals, right? So working with your local business agent together might be a great solution, but it's certainly not insurmountable. That's for sure.
The next question,
that's where the public-facing part of the recognition that I mentioned earlier, the two keys to making a strong program, is if you are in a union environment where monetary awards are not something that you can easily do, just getting them standing up and getting them a round of applause at their driver huddle in the morning, that's recognition. That if that's the environment you're in, leaning more into that public recognition and that public adulation for the drivers who have done a successful job, that's just as valuable as the monetary award is.
Well, it can be just as simple as the president, vice president, or somebody sending out an email. Here's your communication. And everybody sees that email saying, okay, Jeff Martin avoided this situation by doing a great job of evading this crash that happened in front of him, and maybe show a snapshot from the camera. So again, the communication and how you do it in the public, but from somebody in the office front line somewhere, recognition from the office to there are professional drivers, that does a whole lot.
Okay. The next one, I'm not sure if I really understand the question. Do you find it more difficult if your drivers are not professional drivers? I would assume this is if you're hiring a brand new driver for the first time with no professional driving experience. Do you find it more difficult to implement these types of programs?
In all honesty, no. I think also, just to clarify that question, it's more about a CDL driver is considered a professional driver, whereas people who drive is only part of their job, but it's not their job, right? So think of a utility company or a field services that they drive as part of their job, but it's not the only job they do. And in all honesty, the answer is no, because driving, regardless in your personal capacity or as a professional CDL driver, is still ultimately the same concepts, the same things. There may be some nuance there with regard to, the difference between hydraulic brakes and air brakes. But the reality is the same driving practices that everyone does in their personal vehicle are the same ones that are being applied in a commercial vehicle. So we've really not struggled with implementing this with a non-professional, non-CDL driving fleet. They've bought in just as much as the CDL folks have, and they've run very successful programs for decades.
If I could jump in on that too, just really quick, NETS members, our companies range from, maybe 30 vehicles all the way up to 35,000 vehicles. And our, the programs that are out there, Lytix's programs, these apply regardless, like Ryan just said. So it doesn't matter how many drivers you have. Most of our members are not professional CDL drivers. They're just regular, doing their thing for their company. So yeah, I totally just agree with Ryan there that you can implement all of these measures regardless of whether they're, CDL drivers or just 5 drivers versus 50,000.
Is Lytix only US based?
No, we are international, and that's why we're the world's leader in this sector.
Yeah, we cover the US and Canada as well as basically the entire world. We're in 89 different countries at the moment.
Wow. Okay. So yes, if you're watching and you're in another country and you need Lytix, it's no problem. Our last question, and I'm going to throw this to Jeff Martin. Can you expand on fatigue course examples?
Well, I'm not sure what they mean by course. Perhaps remedies might be what they're looking for there to clarify.
Can I jump in for a second, Jeff? Because I just wanted to, if I could share with them. NET's website is trafficsafety.org, and on our resource tab, we have a fatigue management system guide, which could help. So whoever asked this question, if you want to go to our website, look that up. It's a free resource, was created in partnership with our NIOSH board member. And it talks about things you should have in place for your fatigue program, things you need to consider, things that can help you implement some measures to address fatigue. But Jeff, I know, Lytix, you've got the capability, with technology to track fatigue in drivers.
Or early signs, what might be fatigue and certainly sleep apnea, et cetera. And as Susan mentioned, there's many different opportunities where you can get the assistance of how to implement a fatigue management policy, because it's very serious, as you can imagine, and needs to be dealt with. And in some cases, may require doctor's intervention as well. So there's a whole realm of opportunities as far as resources around that for you to look at.
Yeah, I'll say my favorite stat, Jeff, but especially if you're at eastern half of the country in the central time zone or the eastern time zone, Tuesday mornings in the fall are the worst time of day for drowsy driving across the entire country, no matter what industry you're in. My hypothesis for the last 10 years has been that people are up watching Monday Night Football until 11 o'clock at night and then reporting for duty at 5 a.m. to go start their driving gig. But Tuesday mornings, it's 180% more likely to see a driving event than any other time of the year in the fall. So if you want to start somewhere, let's just start with Monday Night Football awareness. That would be my pitch.
Now, that was a fabulous way to wrap this up. I really appreciate that comment, Ryan. And I probably am not going to drive on Tuesdays anymore for the rest of my life to avoid being hit. I thank you so much for joining us. I hope that you found this webinar to be informational. And if you take a look at that screen, again, I want to remind you, the Fleet Safety Operational Excellence Playbook is there. These guides are the culmination of expertise and insight into achieving unparalleled safety and fleet operations. I highly encourage you to download that and study it. Also, the list of presenters is included on the screen, and you can click on their name if you want to send them an email right now. We were able to answer all of the questions. Again, I thank you, my panel, for being here. I thank you for joining us. And on behalf of Lytix and Bob at Business Media, we thank you for joining us.
Thank you.